This was the night that made Elvis Presley the king of rock and roll, but everything was not that smooth. By the late 1960s, Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll, faced an unexpected crossroads. The very man who once revolutionized music now seemed to be losing his spark. Audiences that once hung on to his every word were drifting to the counterculture of the era, embracing new voices, new styles, and a new sound. Elvis was trapped in a cycle of predictable movie roles and watered-down soundtracks that alienated his original fan. The unthinkable was happening. The king's throne was slipping from his grasp. How did Elvis respond to this moment? What could he do to recapture the magic that once made him a global icon? The answers lie in a single defining night that changed everything. Elvis Presley's meteoric rise in the 1950s redefined the music industry. With his rebellious charm, undeniable charisma, and electrifying performances, he didn't just capture attention, he became the symbol of an entire generation. His blend of rhythm and blues, country and gospel birthed rock and roll, a genre that resonated deeply with a youthful audience eager for something bold and new. Songs like Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, and Jailhouse Rock solidified his status as the king of rock and roll. No one could match the sway of his hips or the intensity of his stage presence, and he dominated the charts in a way that seemed unshakable. However, the golden era of Elvis Presley began to dim as the 1960s unfolded. The music scene evolved rapidly, with emerging artists like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and Bob Dylan pushing boundaries with experimental sounds and provocative lyrics. These artists reflected the countercultural movement, voicing the frustrations, dreams, and rebellion of a new era. Their music resonated with audiences seeking authenticity and a deeper connection. Meanwhile, Elvis found himself trapped in a formulaic cycle. After returning from his military service in 1960, his career trajectory shifted dramatically. Instead of focusing on innovative music, he became entangled in a series of lighthearted Hollywood musicals. Though these films initially drew crowds, they lacked substance and artistic ambition. The accompanying soundtracks, often crafted for mass appeal rather than artistic merit, further alienated his audience. Over time, the repetitive nature of his projects began to erode the excitement that once surrounded him. Elvis's inability to adapt to the changing cultural landscape only exacerbated his decline. Younger fans gravitated toward fresher, edgier voices, while longtime admirers yearned for the raw, untamed energy that first defined him. By the mid-1960s, critics and fans alike began to question if Elvis still had the spark that had once made him a revolutionary force. By 1968, Elvis Presley stood at a crossroads. His once thriving career was now a shadow of its former glory. Record sales had plummeted, and the very fans who had once idolized him were losing faith. For a performer who thrived on the adoration of his audience, this shift was both professionally and personally devastating. Privately, Elvis was restless and deeply dissatisfied. While his Hollywood films provided financial security, they did little to challenge him creatively. Friends and confidants noted his growing frustration with the trajectory of his career. He longed for something more meaningful, a return to the stage where he could connect with audiences on a visceral level. Performing wasn't just a job for Elvis, it was his lifeblood. The shifting cultural landscape only heightened his awareness of the need for change. The 1960s had ushered in an era of raw, socially conscious music, leaving Elvis's polished, movie-centric output feeling outdated. He realized that to stay relevant, he needed to reinvent himself, recapturing the raw energy and authenticity that had initially made him a star. Enter Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's longtime manager. Parker proposed a televised Christmas special as a way to reintroduce Elvis to the public. Initially conceived as a straightforward holiday program, the idea sparked something in Elvis. Partnering with producer Steve Binder, Elvis saw an opportunity to redefine his image. Rather than conform to the predictable format of a holiday show, he envisioned something bold and revolutionary, an event that would remind the world of his unparalleled talent. This realization marked a turning point. For the first time in years, Elvis felt driven to prove himself, not just to his fans, but to himself. The stakes were immense. Either he would reclaim his throne or risk becoming a relic of the past. Elvis understood the gravity of this moment, and he was determined to make it count. By the late 1960s, Elvis Presley found himself at a critical juncture in his career. With his popularity waning, an opportunity arose that could potentially reignite his connection with fans. NBC offered him a television special. This was a rare chance for Elvis to step back into the spotlight, but the initial concept for the program was far from groundbreaking. Colonel Tom Parker proposed a straightforward Christmas special. His vision included traditional holiday songs and a staged atmosphere that would do little to challenge the status quo of Elvis's declining career. career. Elvis had grown tired of being boxed into predictable roles. While Parker's approach aimed for safe commercial appeal, Elvis was determined to use the platform to reintroduce himself as a serious artist. He yearned to break away from the overly polished and formulaic image that had defined him throughout much of the 1960s. His goal was not just to entertain, but to remind the world why he had once been crowned the king of rock and roll. Enter Steve Binder, the producer and director of the project. Binder understood Elvis's desire for authenticity and pushed for a bold and raw concept. Together, they decided to strip away the unnecessary glitz and focus on showcasing Elvis's raw talent. Binder proposed segments that would highlight Elvis's charisma, musicality, and roots, including intimate performances where Elvis would connect directly with the audience. The shift in vision transformed the special from a forgettable holiday broadcast into something much more ambitious. It would be a show that celebrated Elvis's past successes while demonstrating his relevance in the rapidly evolving music landscape. This was no longer just a television special, it was a statement, a reclamation of his identity, and a chance to prove he still had what it took to captivate audiences worldwide. Once the concept for the comeback special was finalized, Elvis Presley devoted himself to the preparations with an intensity that left everyone around him amazed. For a man who had been criticized for coasting through much of the 1960s, this level of commitment was a revelation. Elvis understood that the competition was incredibly high. This wasn't just another performance, it was a fight to reclaim his career and reaffirm his legacy. Rehearsals became the foundation of this transformation. Elvis threw himself into every aspect of the preparation process, from vocal practice to perfecting his physical movements. He wanted every detail to be flawless, understanding that even the smallest misstep could undermine the impact of the performance. Those who worked with him during this period were struck by his focus and passion. He wasn't just going through the motions, he was working on himself with full determination and dedication. One of the most pivotal aspects of the preparation involved the sit-down segment, where Elvis would perform in a small, intimate setting surrounded by fans and bandmates. This raw, unfiltered environment was unlike anything he had done before. To ensure its success, Elvis rehearsed tirelessly, working to capture the energy and spontaneity of his early career. Binder also pushed Elvis to tap into a deeper emotional reservoir for the show's climactic performance of If I Can Dream. This song, inspired by the social turmoil of the era, required Elvis to convey a sense of hope and longing that went beyond mere vocal delivery. Elvis took this challenge seriously, channeling his personal frustrations and aspirations into the song. The preparation for the comeback special was not just about logistics, it was a transformation. Elvis emerged from the process not only as a polished performer, but as an artist reinvigorated by his own potential. The dedication he displayed during these months set the stage for a performance that would go down in history. December 3rd, 1968 was not just another date in music history, it was the night Elvis Presley reminded the world of his brilliance. Millions of viewers across America tuned into NBC, many with mixed emotions. Some held on to the hope of seeing the king of rock and roll reclaim his crown, while others were skeptical, wondering if Elvis still had the magic that once mesmerized an entire generation. For Elvis, it was a pivotal moment, an opportunity to silence doubters and reignite the passion that had once set the world on fire. The anticipation was palpable as the program began, but all doubts were swept aside the moment Elvis took the stage. Dressed in an iconic black leather outfit that exuded confidence and charisma, Elvis made it clear that this performance was going to be unlike anything he had done in the past decade. Gone were the glossy, overproduced movie soundtracks and cookie-cutter performances that had come to define his career in the 1960s. This was a return to the raw, electrifying Elvis of the 1950s, the man who had shattered musical norms and sparked a cultural revolution. The special opened with a medley of his greatest hits, including Heartbreak Hotel, Hound Dog, and All Shook Up. Each note was filled with the same energy and grit that had made these songs timeless. Elvis moved across the stage with ease, his every gesture and expression captivating the audience. His voice, powerful and soulful, reminded everyone why he had once been called the king. This was not just a performance, it was a declaration. Elvis wasn't merely trying to entertain, he was reclaiming his place in the world of music. The black leather outfit, his confident demeanor, and his unrelenting energy symbolized his defiance against the idea that he was past his prime. The audience, both in the studio and at home, was left spellbound, realizing that Elvis wasn't just back, he was unstoppable. Amid the grandeur and spectacle of the 1968 special, one segment stood out as particularly intimate and unforgettable, the sit-down sessions. For this portion, Elvis stepped away from the spotlight's traditional staging to embrace a more informal, personal connection with his audience. Seated in a small, circular setup surrounded by his bandmates and fans, Elvis created an atmosphere that felt less like a performance and more like a gathering of old friends. The session was raw and unscripted, just opposite to the polished and rehearsed performances that had dominated his career for years. Elvis laughed, joked, and shared stories about his early days in music. That somewhere showed glimpses of the journey that had brought him to this defining moment. The setting allowed his personality to shine in a way that audiences hadn't seen before. It wasn't just the king of rock and roll performing. It was Elvis the man connecting directly with those who had supported him through the years. During the session, Elvis revisited many of his early hits, performing them with a renewed energy that felt both nostalgic and fresh. With his guitar in hand, he played classics like That's All Right and Blue Christmas, demonstrating the same fiery passion and effortless talent that had first made him a star. The simplicity of the setup, just Elvis, his bandmates, and his guitar, put the focus entirely on his artistry. It was the same raw talent that had once made the world take notice. The sit-down sessions became the emotional core of the special. They captured Elvis at his most genuine, stripping away the layers of Hollywood gloss to reveal the artist beneath. For fans, it was a powerful reminder of why they had fallen in love with his music in the first place. For Elvis, it was a triumphant return to his roots, proving that the king still reigned supreme. The culmination of Elvis Presley's 1968 comeback special was nothing short of groundbreaking. In the middle of this unforgettable night was his performance of If I Can Dream, a song deeply inspired by the social and political turmoil of the time, particularly the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. earlier that year. This ballad was unlike anything Elvis had performed before, both in its message and its emotional weight. The song was written specifically for Elvis by songwriter Walter Earl Brown. Its lyrics carried a profound message of hope, equality, and the yearning for a brighter future, values that resonated deeply in a year marked by civil unrest and despair. For Elvis, singing If I Can Dream was more than just another performance, it was a personal declaration. The song's amazing lyrics, combined with its gospel-like melody, allowed Elvis to express a side of himself that fans had rarely seen. A man deeply moved by the struggles of his time and eager to connect with the audience on a raw, emotional level. Clad in his iconic white suit, Elvis poured his heart into the performance. His voice carried a depth of conviction that left no doubt about his sincerity. Many watching believed they were witnessing the king bearing his soul, reclaiming his place not just as a performer, but as an artist with something meaningful to say. This performance was a powerful statement. It was as though Elvis was saying, "I'm still here and I still matter." The moment transcended entertainment, reminding audiences of music's power to heal and unite. With If I Can Dream, Elvis not only solidified his comeback, but also showed that he was more than just a cultural icon. He was an enduring force with a message of hope and resilience. The immediate response to Elvis's 1968 comeback special was nothing short of sensational. When it aired on December 3rd, millions of viewers tuned in, and their reaction was unanimous. The king was back. The special, aptly titled Elvis, became an instant cultural phenomenon, praised by both fans and critics as one of the most compelling moments in television history. Critics who had long dismissed Elvis as a fading star found themselves reevaluating his relevance. They hailed the special as a triumph, not just for Elvis, but for television itself. For fans, many of whom had felt disillusioned during his movie years, the special was a moment of vindication. It reminded them of the fiery, magnetic performer they had fallen in love with a decade earlier. Perhaps most importantly, the special reignited Elvis's career in ways that even he might not have anticipated. The success of the show led to a wave of renewed interest in his music. His next studio album, From Elvis in Memphis, would go on to produce some of the most iconic tracks of his career, including Suspicious Minds and In the Ghetto. Beyond sales and accolades, the special restored Elvis's confidence as an artist. It proved to him and the world that he still had the power to captivate audiences and push boundaries. No longer was he just a Hollywood star singing formulaic songs. He had reclaimed his identity as a true musical pioneer. The 1968 comeback special didn't just save Elvis's career, it cemented his legacy. It demonstrated that even after years of struggle, the king of rock and roll still had the ability to inspire, innovate, and lead the charge. For Elvis, this wasn't just a comeback, it was a resurrection. The 1968 comeback special by Elvis Presley wasn't just a show, it was a turning point. Elvis was no longer without a doubt the king of rock and roll at this point. In the 1960s, new artists who made big waves and changes in culture pushed him out of the public eye. The special special was more than just a chance to save a career that was on the verge of failure. It was about reclaiming the personality that had once electrified the world. Elvis had been stuck for years in a cycle of boring movie parts and uninspired soundtracks that didn't make him happy as an artist. Crazy music fans used to love him, but now they saw him as a shadow of the person he used to be. The show made it clear that Elvis was more than just a cultural icon. He was also a real artist with unmatched skill and unbridled emotion. It made people think of the things that made him famous in the first place: his lively energy, powerful voice, and captivating personality. The 1968 special also showed how strong Elvis was. For a man whose importance had been called into question, this wasn't an easy job. He had to be very brave to go on stage, knowing that everyone would be looking and waiting to see if he still had what it took. But Elvis didn't just live up to people's hopes, he broke them. The simple setup, his moving performance of If I Can Dream, and the honest closeness of the sit-down sessions showed that he could handle the feedback and give an amazing performance. Not only for Elvis, but for the whole music industry, this was a turning point. It was a lesson that real art doesn't depend on trends or time. The King took back his name, which made him even more of a legend that will last forever. One of the most important nights in Elvis Presley's life was the night he fought to keep his business alive. He wasn't just trying to show that he could still entertain, he was also trying to show everyone why he was the king of rock and roll in the first place. The special not only brought his career back to life, but it also set a new bar for comebacks in the entertainment business. Elvis's show wasn't just a return to form, it was a statement of purpose. It was clear from him that a star could always rise again with the right mix of ability and determination, no matter how low they fell. The comeback special showed how important it is to be strong and able to change while staying true to yourself. It was a way for artists to get back on track, and they still do. More importantly, the special made Elvis a sign of never giving up. It showed everyone that failing isn't the end of the story, it's just a new part. Elvis's amazing ability to come back from adversity made him a cultural hero, not just for the music he made, but also for the hope and inspiration he gave people. His story touched people outside of the entertainment business, especially those who have had failures or doubts about their ability to get back on their feet. In the end, this night changed what it meant to be king. Elvis didn't just rule the charts, he also ruled the hearts of a huge number of people. His impact went beyond his hits. It was rooted in the hearts of those who admired his path. He became a symbol of how passion, persistence, and artistry can last for a long time. It is these traits that will keep his fame alive and inspire new generations. Elvis Presley's 1968 comeback special isn't just a moment in music history, it's an inspiration. It's proof that no matter how far you fall, there's always a way back if you're willing to fight for it. If you were moved by this story, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with others who admire the king or those who could use a reminder that comebacks are possible. And don't forget to subscribe for more motivating incidents that capture the heart and soul of music history.